Welcome into Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. Get ready for a big weekend of fantasy football. All the moves that you need to know in advance. We'll give them to you right here. Craig Mish along with George Kurtz. And as we get ready for week 3 of the NFL, we'll also recap the Bills and Dolphins on Thursday night. But George, as we get ready for the week in fantasy football, arguably, we could go into prediction mode from the beginning of the season. And I would say, George, we're going to be here in week 3. And so many players are going to be hurt. But you got to give me the position that the players are hurt. You would have said, well, Craig, probably the running back position. And I would say, no. How about the wide receiver position? I would say, no, George, you're 0 for 2. All right, well, then it has to be the tight end. No. It is indeed the quarterback position in fantasy football. Dare I say, George, I would say right now, through 3 weeks of the season, this is the most significant quarterback issues that we've had in fantasy football in a very long time. I guess the good news is if you're playing in a 12-team league or even a 14-team league, you just grab somebody on the waiver wire. We'll get into that as well. A lot of people playing in these super flex leagues where there are no quarterbacks available at all.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? If you're in a one quarterback league, you're okay. All right, there should be somebody on the waiver wire for you to grab here. But if you're in super flex or 2 quarterback leagues, yeah, this week hurt a lot. All right. I mean, some of the guys we're going to get back, right? Justin Fields, couple of weeks maybe, Daniels maybe next week, and McCarthy, same thing, couple of weeks. You ain't getting Burrow back. All right, that's a problem. All right, so that one hurts a lot because that's probably your 5th quarterback taken, right, in drafts.
Yeah.
After Hurts, Hurts, Jackson, Allen, and I'm leaving one guy out there who I know I shouldn't be. I apologize to that guy, but he should be. He was the 5th quarterback taken overall. Daniels, right. And he's out this week, too. That's right. So
no, not him. J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy was who I was alluding to. I didn't know which direction you were going for top 5 quarterbacks or top 5, or just injured quarterbacks. I didn't know which one you wanted.
Top 5 drafted at draft time.
Gotcha.
J.J. wasn't one. I had J.J. in a league, by the way, but he was my 3rd quarterback. I had Burrow in one league, Greg. And
me too.
I guess that was the next big thing is how much Jake Browning cost this week, which is more than I expected in a lot of drafts, Greg. He went for I saw the whole leagues I play in, the highest I saw was half. He went 50% of someone's budget here, and that person needed to do that because the numbers behind it, he only won by a couple of bucks here. So people are banking on Browning, I guess picking up right where Burrow left off, or at least being 3/4 of Burrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, does have a pretty decent matchup on the other side. It's Carson Wentz. I like Browning playing more than I like Wentz. Here are some of our headlines as we continue on with the show. We've got, of course, the quarterback issues, as George alluded to. If you are just tuning in, Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders is not going to play this week. It's going to be Marcus Mariota against the Raiders. So downgrades across the board, I would guess, for all the offensive weapons on Washington. I mean, Mariota could certainly hold his own in an offense, but he ain't going to be throwing bombs to Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel and those guys as well. Looks like the tush push. This could be the final season of it. They're going to be scrutinizing this a lot more and looking at some penalty issues too, and this could be it. There is a little piece of good news here, although, hey, if you have to make the decision now, I don't know what you do. Brock Purdy could play this week. We're still not sure as we're doing the show. And then Tucker Kraft, that's another big one coming off a huge game last week. He's had some strange recurring issues at practice this week, so you may have to make a decision on him. I mean, the good thing is you got Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker Sunday morning to help you through this. The bad news is as we're doing the show right now, we're not particularly certain. So we talked about Burrow. I think, George, I don't know if you agree with me or not, if you're playing in a 12-team league and you have your normal roster size, I think you cut Joe Burrow. I think if you're playing in anything deeper than that and you can, afford to hang on to him for a couple weeks just to see how the surgery ends up going, I think that's okay. But I think in a 10-team league or a 12-team league, I think you'll let that be somebody else's problem, even with an IR spot. You let somebody grab him and, start him week 16 or something if that's the case. I think he's cuttable right now in the 10 or 12-team formats. How about you?
I think it's cuttable in every format. That being said, if you have unlimited IR, well, your problem's up. Put him on IR. All right, note there. But even if you have limited IR, but you have IR slots open, you put him on IR. But as soon as he becomes a problem, where he's hurting your roster, where you can't keep somebody else who's coming back, well, you let Burrow go. You just said it. The best case scenario, and we mean best case, is week 15, week 16. And by the way, that's fantasy playoffs. Are you going to trust him one weekend? Oh, yeah, I'm going to plug him in. Just throw him in there. If you've gotten that far, that means the quarterback you're using, probably pretty good, right? Probably pretty good to get you that far here. So Yeah, I think I'm fine with moving on from Burrow, unless you can afford to do it. Like I said, if you have unlimited IR, no issues. If you have limited IR, as long as you don't have a lot of injuries, no problem. You put him there, you see what happens there. Maybe you'll need him here, but anything else, no, I'm not letting him clog up my roster. Not for a guy that's 3 months. That's the minimum, 3 months for this injury here. So no, I'm moving on from Joe Burrow in most leagues, unless, like I said, I have keeper league, dynasty league, or unlimited IR.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so we'll have to update Brock Purdy Sunday on all of our shows here on Sports Grid, because as we're doing the show right now, we're not certain as to whether or not he's going to be in or he's going to be out. From a fantasy perspective, lock in Sunday to Sports Grid, and then you can make your decision based on that. Let's go back to Thursday night football, George. There's no question that this game was a lot closer than most people thought it would be. The Miami Dolphins opened up. They scored first. They looked really good on their opening drive, but then they only managed 14 points the rest of the game. The Bills also did not have their best game. They, failed to complete some different, I would say, passes over the middle, fair to say, on the outside. Josh Allen, probably not his best game. James Cook did have a nice game, but as you see, that's a bad game for Josh Allen, which is crazy. That's a great game for James Cook, obviously getting 20 points. So everyone is talking today more about like what we saw from Miami at this point, because I mean, all their fantasy stars, you basically couldn't play. And then all of a sudden last night, Tyreek Hill got involved in the action. Jalen Waddle also got involved in the action, ended up scoring a touchdown. And so it lends the question, now that they have 10 days off and going into the future, we know what we're doing with Buffalo, George, but do we feel more confident in Miami now that their schedule is going to soften up a little bit? 0-3 to start the season. I kind of feel like they're still going to trade Tyreek Hill and make some moves at the trade deadline in November. But I think for the time being, you feel a little bit better about what you saw, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree on all your points there. I think Tyreek Hill probably does get traded, assuming teams aren't going to be worried about this new accusations against him of the DV. So we'll see how that works out here. And Miami's schedule does get easier, but I don't think we think they're going to make a playoff run, right? So I think they'll be sort of incentivized to move him as well. Let's get what we can for him. All right. After what happened last year, where he said he wasn't coming back to the team anyway, and his production is only going to get less and less, right? It's not going to get more and more. So you can move on from him. But that being said, while he's playing, he's in your lineup. I'm the first person to tell you I have Jalen Waddle in one league, and the only reason I played him last night is because I have two other receivers who are questionable. And I didn't want to wait to find Sunday to see if they're going to play. While I was playing last night, I'll plug him in, and I'll worry about starting one of the other two guys on Sunday. So sort of worked out there, although he had the great stat there for a while, Craig. Right? 2 receptions, no yards, but a touchdown. Hey, we'll take it and run here. He ended up with about 14, 15 fantasy points there, so we paid off for you there. So, I think I think you put it perfectly. I am more comfortable starting Hill and Waddle coming in when they play next in week 4. Tua in a one-quarterback league, that's more of a question of who else is on your roster.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, George, I should mention last night, you finally got your Dalton Kincaid game. It took like 2 years, but you got it last night. 5 catches, 66 yards. And a touchdown, very heavily involved in the offense. Like, why is this guy not doing this every week is what I can't figure out. But I guess credit to Josh Allen. He likes to move the ball around.
Yeah, and he should have another touchdown too, right? He got tackled at the 1 yard line. He's like, put your head down, buddy, get in there. But yeah, he had a big game there. Craig jokes was last year I had Kincaid's over on touchdowns. I think I needed 7. What did he get, 2? And now I think he's got 2 already this year. So yeah, thanks, Dalton. Thanks. You're a year too late for me, buddy. But listen, Craig, I think we're going to see this a lot from the Buffalo Bills. Every week it could be someone different. Kincaid, Coleman, Shakir. Cook will be the one constant there. But I think trying to guess who's going to have the big reception game is going to be very tough week in and week out when you're guessing with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, would agree. All right, so let's do this. Let's before we move forward, let's take a look back and see if some of the performances last week are sustainable. Our fantasy standouts from week 2 in the National Football League are coming up next. Craig Mish and George Kurtz. It's Fantasy Sports Today exclusively here on SportsGrid, and we'll be back right after these quick messages after this.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
And a couple of surprising fantasy standouts, not just from week 2, but back-to-back weeks in fantasy football. So George and I happy to go through this, although I don't really know, who's benefiting from Javonte Williams being one of the best running backs thus far in fantasy football. I mean, what's funny is that something like this happens where these sort of numbers were what we expected from him in Denver on a week-to-week basis, and he never did it. In fact, people blamed Melvin Gordon, if you remember, from stealing carries from this guy. When he got the carries alone in Denver, it didn't work. All of a sudden now, George, he goes to Dallas, and he's like the running back by default. It felt like nobody really wanted him, and this guy just keeps finding the end zone. So, I mean, look, I don't see this continuing over the course of the whole season, but the Cowboys don't have any other options, and getting close to 100 yards in the National Football League on the ground with all the competition at running backs, you could do worse than starting Javonte Williams. He's starting on every fantasy team this week, that's for sure.
Oh, he's a must start right now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. First off, the Chicago Bears, Craig, you and I could line up behind center, and we're going to get some yards, okay? That's a bad run defense there. The Dallas Cowboys, we know they're going to score points. And then, by the way, the Bears, it's top 2 cornerbacks, maybe top 3 cornerbacks are out Sunday. So the Cowboys should be able to move the ball almost at will. And we know they can't stop anybody. So the Bears might move the ball at will. Should be a lot of points coming Sunday. That being said, it'll probably be a 17-14 final now. But Javonte Williams is absolutely a star for your team here. I mean, he was a bust in Denver. If you want to look, hey, you want to put bright rose-colored glasses, whatever you want to call it on there. Okay, year 1 didn't work out. Maybe it was the defensive line. Then he got hurt. All right, and then he wasn't really recovered in year 3, and now he's recovered from the injury. He's that player he was supposed to be. As if you want to look at it that way, you can. But I do think this is more a product of the fact that teams are worried about CeeDee Lamb. They're worried about George Pickens. They'll pick their battles. You can't stop everybody. If Javonte Williams is going to run the ball, he's going to run the ball. He might get some touchdowns, and that that's the way it's going to be. It's great for fantasy, as you mentioned. I have him as a borderline running back 1 this week.
Right.
I think I have him just outside my top 12. So he's a borderline running back 1. So and I'd be surprised, Craig, if he doesn't have double-digit fantasy points again when we look at the box score on Monday.
Justin Herbert's red hot for the Chargers and seems to be mixing it up amongst wide receivers. And if I gave you Keenan Allen's stats on the season, you probably would have said, well, the reason why Keenan Allen is performing so well is because Quentin Johnston isn't. And that's not the case at all. Back-to-back weeks, George, Quentin Johnson has been better than Ladd McConkey. And I don't think anybody saw that coming into the season. And so with McConkey and Allen and now Johnston emerging here in his second year, it does feel like what we're seeing from the Chargers is legit.
Yeah, no one saw this coming, right? Because they can't run the ball. All right, we all assume with Harbaugh they're going to run the ball. That's what they do. It's what Harbaugh wants to do. But they haven't been able to run the ball. Maybe it's because of Slater, their top offensive lineman, was lost for the season in preseason. But Harbaugh just, I mean, he's almost like he's just throwing his nose at it. We're going to throw the ball all over the place. Because you said it. Allen's been really good. What a great signing. How did he last that long? But he's been great. Quentin Johnson, you talk about a career revival. Well, right now he's having it because he looks really good there. And yeah, we're getting trolled because Glad McConkey, who was second round pick, maybe third, and he's not doing much. All right. So no. Allen, great. Quentin Johnson, great. McConkey, no. Hampton, no. So we are being trolled a little bit by who's doing what for the Chargers here. And we know Herbert's a really good quarterback. I didn't have him in my top 10, but they're going to keep throwing the ball like this. He's going to end up being much better than top 10, maybe top 5 by season's end. He is a good quarterback, and he's showing what he can do when he has receivers that he can trust.
Yeah, and by the way, has moved into the MVP conversation in the National Football League. He's third right now, third shortest odds on FanDuel. All right, so the Denver Broncos, of course, that show was supposed to be Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton. And while Sutton's doing okay, it looks like Bo Nix has found another target in the form of Troy Franklin. And George, this is not like 4 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, look at these numbers from last week. 9 targets, 8 catches, 89 yards, and a score. I'm not really sure who we thought the wide receiver 2 would be on the Denver Broncos going into the season, but boy, Franklin, the hottest pickup off the waiver wire this week, no doubt about that.
Yeah, he went in every league I went in. I don't think he was drafted in any of those leagues, by the way, but he was a hot waiver wire pickup for everybody. They're playing the Chargers this week, all right, so it should be a good game, more of a low-scoring game here. So I don't know if I'm going to be thrilled about starting him this week here, but I think he was a pickup worth adding here. I think Sutton, you can make an argument here, depending on how deep you're at wide receiver. I don't want to start him this week. I need to see a little bit more here. Bo Nix has been not quite, once again, maybe a slow start to the season. It's like it was last year where he's got to build up here. But right now, I'm not thrilled about starting Sutton. I probably will have to. We start 3 wide receivers. We got a flex. You may not have a choice here. But I'm not really loving what I'm seeing from Sutton right now. You're not dropping him, by the way. But I do wonder if, depending on, like I said, what your roster depth is, if you want to start him. And I'd rather go in a different direction, especially this week.
At tight end, the Cowboys, played the longest game maybe of the year. We don't know unless there's a tie because that thing went right down to the end. So I think some of these numbers, George, a little bit inflated with Jake Ferguson. 9 catches, 78 yards, was a bigger part of the offense. But a lot of those offensive numbers for both sides, I think, got out of control in overtime. But look, still, I mean, you do have underperforming tight ends in fantasy. Ferguson was thought to be a back-end tight end 1, if not tight end 2. Did you change any thoughts on that?
Not you put it perfectly. That's what he was coming into the season, right? You're top 10, top 12. He's right around there. When Dak is healthy, Dak does use him. And sort of what I said about Javonte Williams applies to Ferguson as well. No one's worried about him. All right? They're worried about Pickens. They're worried about Lamb. They're worried about dying by the long pass here, not the slow guy over the middle. All right? So, yeah, I think Ferguson, once again, I probably want him over Njoku right now. Right? Njoku's not doing anything. You want him over Ingram right now. So he's climbing up the charts here. I don't listen. He's not going to finish top 5. That would be very surprising. But do I think he ends up being a tight end 1 at season's end? Top 10? Absolutely. So a good, solid guy, but not. He's rarely going to be a weekly winner for you. Oh, I won because Ferguson had 8 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You're not going to get Travis Kelce in his prime numbers here, but he probably won't disappoint you much either.
So the Harold Fannin of last week, his name this week is Jatavian Sanders, the tight end of the Carolina Panthers. This is the kind of guy that could still be very well on your waiver wire right now. But we'll check back next week on this guy, George. If he has another nice week, I think there's something there. Also, keep in mind, Carolina was down very big in this game and just kept getting the ball back and the ball back and the penalties and the ball back, and they almost came back and won this game. I'm going to pause on him. I'll wait to see what he does this week.
Agreed. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I probably need to see it happen again before jumping in on him. But like I said, we are having some problems with our lower end tight ends who aren't producing right now. Maybe he is worth a little flyer.
Yeah, especially if you have Ingram like me. Waiver wire quarterbacks. You got to pick up somebody to start this week.
look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scottaboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left, Donnie, for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A very rare week in the National Football League that a handful of quarterbacks that started last week will not this week, George. It is carnage at the quarterback position. Joe Burrow is on injured reserve. He's probably out for the season. Jaden Daniels not going to play this week. Marcus Mariota is going to back him up. J.J. McCarthy, who was so great in his comeback in week 1, didn't do well week 2, and now he's on IR as well. Justin Fields has taken a back seat to Tyrod Taylor, and we're still unclear on Brock Purdy. I mean, I don't want to keep going, George. I'm hoping I don't have to keep going, but yeah, I mean, you pretty much, if you're starting one of those guys going into the week, you may even need to get a backup quarterback. So we're going to hit the waiver wire this week at the quarterback position, which is not generally something you have to do this early in the season.
Yeah, and it's something. Now it has changed over the years. You know, back in the day, we didn't draft more than one quarterback. You drafted a quarterback and then you moved on. A lot of leagues now you do draft a backup quarterback. You know, sometimes we say you shouldn't do that because you want to load up on wide receivers or running backs, but a lot of people did or do. And I think I have a backup in every league I play it in now. It just goes, they're just the best player available in round 13, round 40. So I'll take a backup quarterback. So you might be okay anyway. But yeah, losing Burrow is a blow. All right. I mean, you expected, 40 touchdowns from him? 4,500 yards? Browning's not making that up. And you're not picking up anybody off the waiver wire who's making that up. So that's definitely a huge loss for people.
Yeah, my backup in my 12-team league, as George mentioned, I'm a good candidate to have a comparison there, is Trevor Lawrence. So Trevor Lawrence is going to start for me, and then I just didn't pick up another backup. But in one of my leagues, I'm playing against Jaden Daniels, so I feel like that evened the playing field just a bit. So here are some quarterbacks on the waiver wire potentially under 30% owned in fantasy football leagues, George. And this is going to be your last shot to get on Indiana Jones's train here. Daniel Jones, who has 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and look how many yards passing at the start of the season. This is a big number. This is it. Like, I mean, he's still probably on the borderline of starting for teams in fantasy, but another week like the ones that he's had the last 2 weeks, George, and he's going to be starting in fantasy the rest of the season. So may want to grab him just in case.
Yeah, I think Jones has to be grabbed right now. And I'd be very surprised if he's not 75, 80% owned at this time, by game time Sunday with all the quarterbacks that are hurt. Even if nobody was hurt, by the way, he should have been grabbed. All right, he's having that good a season. He can add points with his legs, can add points with his arm here. Colts look to be a better team. They have Jonathan Taylor, a top running back, so teams just can't play at the pass. You got Tennessee this week. I mean, everything's pointing to Daniel Jones here. I've only got him in one league, and I drafted him. As I told you during the break, I did that to screw people over in my league. Superflex league. He was there late, and he was my fourth quarterback. Fourth quarterback then. He's starting for me this week, though, and I don't have any injuries. But he's starting for me this week over Geno Smith and Jordan Love. All right, because that's how well he's played. I'm going to start him over Jordan Love. I think it's a tougher matchup against the Cleveland defense there. So, I'm a Daniel, and I think Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback, but maybe sort of revived himself. He was terrible with the Giants, but maybe a good offensive line. Maybe that's all you need, Craig, to know you're not going to get killed in 2.2 seconds.
His former team is the Giants, and Russell Wilson, probably had the last best game of his life this past week in overtime. I don't think all those stats are basically from last week. I know he didn't throw for 600 yards. He threw for 400. I'm still not a believer, George. I think he's going to get replaced eventually. So this is just move along here. 13% owned.
Agreed. I mean, what do you believe? Week 1 or week 2? Dallas couldn't stop anybody last week, and Washington stopped them completely, and they don't have a great defense either here. By the way, the second part of what you said is so true. Sooner or later, he's going bye-bye. All right, Jackson Dart's going to play for them. It's just a matter of time here. He put himself a couple more weeks. And this week against Kansas City, now I think you can do better here. But if you're desperate, hey, you got to do what you got to do. But he wouldn't be somebody I'd be looking to grab now.
Aaron Rodgers also fell back to earth, and so his ownage percentage dropped a little in fantasy, down to 22.5. But if their defense isn't very good, then maybe he'll have to keep throwing.
Yeah, lower end quarterback too is really where I have him. Plays New England this week. Christian Gonzalez might return here, so that could hurt Metcalf a little bit. I mean, I'd rather have him over Wilson, but I'd rather have Daniel Jones over Rodgers. So as the three guys we've talked about, he's right in the middle for me here. We know he'll be starting until if and when he does get hurt. And I think he'll give you solid quarterback 2 numbers, but once again, where's the upside here? And that's sort of what you need here. And I think Daniel Jones provides much more of that than Aaron Rodgers does.
Spencer Rattler has looked pretty good in his first 2 starts for the Saints. They were at home, though. George, this is the big test this week. They're going to Seattle. So either they lose 51-0 and the Saints become the Saints, or maybe the Saints are a little better than we thought. Those are the only 2 outcomes for me this week.
The best thing I can say about Rattler is that he's made Olave okay to start. He's not useless. So it's been fun.
Fair enough. We'll be right back.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Fantasy matchups of the week in fantasy football. What else is there? We've got George Kurtz, Craig Mish along for the ride here for the next 30 minutes or so. And don't forget, you can catch Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker on Sundays. Let's start off with the game of the week in the NFL. How did this become the game of the week in the NFL? I guess because it involves the Cowboys. It is the Cowboys and Bears, where Tom Brady steals all of the Bears' information and runs back to the Raiders to tell them everything that's going on. This is the big story in the NFL this week. I don't get this one at all. But that's the hot topic here, George. Neither team can stop anybody. Probably good starts for everyone. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's pretty much a all hands on deck kind of game. But the intrigue, I think, is surrounding DeAndre Swift, if I'm not mistaken, of the Bears, who missed a couple of days of practice, regardless of what happens over the weekend. You know, that player Monagai, Kyle Monagai, who everyone's been talking about, they're back at it again on social media here with this guy finally getting the big opportunity this week. And look, I get it. You got to pick up running backs, Monagai. You got to pick up running backs before they become something, because once they do, it's too late. I'll get to that a little later with Seattle as well. I can't believe a Cowboys-Bears game is one of the higher totals on the board this week, but I guess defense has told the story.
What defense? Does either team have one? All right. I think I said earlier, I believe the Bears are going to be without their top two cornerbacks, maybe top three for this game here. So they're all banged up. I think their top linebacker also may not play here. So they're going to have issues, and they haven't been able to get to the quarterback at all. And we all saw what Russell Wilson did to that Cowboys secondary. All right, and once again, the Cowboys are likely going to be without two of their top three cornerbacks as well, as DeRon Bland is out, and their the second, third round pick, Sherrell Moore, is also on the PUP list. He can't return until week 5, so they're banged up, and we know they don't get to the quarterback either without Micah Parsons. So yeah, points are coming. Listen, am I starting DeAndre Swift? He's been a limited participant in practice all week. He's listed as questionable here. Tough start here. You want to, of course, but I have a tough time starting him. I have him in one league. I'm already benching him. I have enough depth to cover for it. I don't want to take a chance that he gets hurt here. Other than that, everybody else goes. Everybody who's a catcher, a Dunze goes, right? He had 2 touchdowns last week. He looks good here. You want to start these guys against the Cowboys here. In the only league I have Caleb Williams. I also had Jaden Daniels. I was already starting Williams over Daniels anyway. The fact that Daniels is out, that just makes that all the more easier. But that lets you know, I think Williams is going to have a good game. He's going to have a good game, because the Cowboys are going to score points. You know, we know that's what they do. They're going to score points here. I don't think either team can stop the other here. So if you have a Bear or a Cowboy on your team and you're not starting him, you're going to have to ask that question, why is this player on my team?
Yeah, better have a much better option if that's the case. Broncos and Chargers. The Chargers offense looks a lot different than it did a year ago. They're still running the ball, but they're throwing a heck of a lot more. And so all of those wide receivers, I mean, McConkey's still definitely playable, and Johnson playable again, maybe even Keenan Allen. And I still think you got to go back to Myron Hampton regardless. I guess the question for Denver is, with the emergence of Franklin playing so well, George, you illustrated maybe Sutton, maybe not. And then the bigger question is that, I mean, it appears that J.K. Dobbins is the RB1 in Denver. We were sold this offseason that it was going to be a tandem running back situation with him and R.J. Harvey. And when Harvey gets the ball, he looks really good, but they're only giving him a handful of carries. It appears to me as though as long as Dobbins is going good, I don't think is he even a flex at this point?
I would agree with you. Doesn't it seem like last week that all the coaches who drafted early round running backs all got together? Let's screw them all. All right, Harvey, Henderson, Genty, Hampton. None of them did anything. All right, it was just a weird week where of all these young running backs who we all liked. All right, we liked these guys to a certain degree. I think everyone I mentioned was at least an RB2. All right, and then none of them doing anything here. So I read this the same way as you. I'd rather have Dobbins over Harvey. Probably not starting Harvey this week unless I don't have anything else there, which you might not. You know, it's running back. You know, we're in desperation mode here. My worry about the Chargers is this going to be the week that the Denver defense shows up? Yeah, that they become the Denver defense. That's my worry here. So that's why I want to start Allen. I want to start Quentin Johnson. I'm starting McConkey. No choice there, but.
Right.
I'd be very much looking who else I have here, because I'm just worried about this. Is gonna be this is the week where Denver all of a sudden starts shutting down somebody completely, and the Denver defense is looking like the number one defense we thought they might be coming into this season.
Rams and Eagles, that's a big one this week, of course. I mean, who don't you start this week on either of these two teams? I mean, of course, the running backs and Barkley, Kyron Williams, receivers on both sides. Somehow this did not get made game of the week on Fox. I'm not sure. I guess because the Cowboys did somehow, George. But this is the primary game for me this week. I mean, the most fantasy points could come out of this one.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that now. You're right. This should be the game of the week. It's a rematch of the NFC divisional game last year. How is this not the game of the week? Weird. Cowboys always get good ratings, I guess, and whatever. But I am surprised, like you, that this is not the game of the week here. The Eagles are living a charmed life. All right. And listen, defense counts here. But if they don't strip Miles Sanders inside the 10-yard line, if Travis Kelce doesn't tip that ball last week at the goal line, Eagles could be 0-2. All right, instead, hey, they made those plays and it worked out their way. They're 2-0 here. Their offense is very blah. All right, you're not getting points from Jalen Hurts. You're not getting anything from A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith right now. Goddard is questionable this week. You don't want to check his status for the game here. So you're starting all those guys, by the way. But like I said, we're not getting the fantasy goodness we thought we'd get from these guys.
No.
As far as the Rams are concerned, Stafford, Nakua looks great. All right, he's racking up points. Devontae Adams got a touchdown last week. He looks solid there. Kyron Williams could be a slow week for him this week, but you have no choice. You're starting him.
Texans and Jaguars featuring the best running back in football, Travis Etienne, right? We all saw that coming at the beginning of the season. What in the world, man? This guy looks fantastic. Jaguars probably should have beat the Bengals last week if Brian Thomas could hang on to a football. They did not. And I think for me, George, it feels like Bill O'Brien must be coaching the Texans again, because they've just decided all these offensive weapons we have, we're just not interested in using them anymore. I know Nico Collins did score. I mean, but you have C.J. Stroud, you have Collins, you have great receivers on the outside. I mean, what are the Texans doing? Is their offensive line just that bad that they've decided we got to shut it down and score 17 points to win? They're not going to go anywhere playing that kind of game in the NFL.
I think that's part of it. I do think that's part of it. What you said, the offensive line is not good. You know, they pretty much rejiggered it right during the offseason. They got rid of Tunsil, got rid of a couple other players, brought new guys in here. Maybe it's going to take a little while to gel. Maybe that's what they're waiting for. That sort of thing there. I also think they know their defense is really good, so they're relying on that defense, and that's going to lead to one possession games where it might go your way, it might not go your way. So I think that's part of the problem there, but I think they will figure it out. That being said, I don't think they're a great team. I just think they're a better team than what they've shown or what their record shows so far. The Jaguars are fun. They're just fun, right? Lawrence looks better. All right. I know Travis Hunter, that game last week where you're blaming on Brian Thomas. If Travis Hunter doesn't commit that DPI, it wasn't 3rd and 20 or something like that. They might win the game there too, but he hasn't been that player yet that justified his what they gave up for to acquire him in the draft. So we're still waiting for that as well here. But they've been fun. Travis Etienne, yeah, I don't think anybody saw this coming. I don't have him anywhere. Not anywhere. I don't even think I have any best ball teams. That's how much I didn't think he'd would do anything again. So, but right now, is he your fantasy MVP? The way I look at it, some low guy drafted. Yeah. He has to be, right? Right now, he might be your fantasy MVP.
I mean, I don't have him either, but the guy's got 200 yards and a bunch of touchdowns, and we've only played 2 weeks. I mean, he has I think he has more numbers this year in 2 games than he had all last year. I can't figure it out. Chiefs and Giants. Man, if the Chiefs don't win this week, there's big trouble. They've lost 3 games in a row dating back to the Super Bowl. Still can't figure out on offense who to play on the Chiefs, right? Same thing every week with them. Giants, I saw some hot Wan'Dale Robinson pickup stuff this week. I guess so. I'm not big on the Giants, though. I think Chiefs defense actually a pretty good play in this one.
I wonder if the Giants can win this game. It's more of a betting angle here, but I wonder if the Giants can win this game Sunday night in Jersey there. Xavier Worthy question, well, maybe he plays. I'm probably not going to trust him anyway, even though you want to against that Giants secondary. We saw what they can or can't do here. Kelsey, yes. Mahomes, yes. Nobody else I truly trust. I probably do have to go with Pacheco this week, Craig. Giants can't stop anybody on the ground here, so I probably have to go with Pacheco there. Yeah, maybe he gets into the end zone. I don't expect much, but maybe he gets into the end zone here.
All right. My producer, Sam, he sent me a message in all caps. So that means I have to go to the break right now, or else bad things will happen to my fantasy team. Be right back.
look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. Did we have time for Lions Ravens? I wish we did, man. That's going to be a good game. All right, fine. Lions Ravens, play everybody. That's the easiest thing. My glasses are off here. All right, let's get to, we got a lot to do here, so let's play a little game of buy or sell. All right, so the Miami Dolphins come up short against the Buffalo Bills. They have 10 days off approximately until their next game. It would appear from most of the reports, George, that Mike McDaniel is going to keep his job as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. This is a long season, though, and they're already 0-3. Buy or sell, McDaniel will be the Dolphins head coach at the end of the season. So for technical purposes, this will be the end of the regular season. Mike McDaniel makes it through. Buy or sell?
All right, looking at the schedule here. All right, you get the Jets, Carolina here. You got to give them at least win at least one of them. Their bye week is after week 11. I'll say he's going to get fired. All right, it's either now, later in the season, at the end of the season. He's not making it to next year. So the only question is, do they let him go towards the end of the season here? New York, Carolina, Chargers, Cleveland, Atlanta, Baltimore, bye. Atlanta, Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington going into that bye. And that Washington game, by the way, is in Europe somewhere. So I don't think he survives that. I don't think he's going to survive the bye week. I think it's going to go 1-3 of those games, maybe even lose all 4 of those games. No. And I think they will trade some players away, so they're going to be a worse team than they are now here. No, I'm going to sell this. He does not make it to the end of the season. I think they're going to fire him after week 11, if I had to guess. I think it's the perfect spot because not only is there a bye week, tough schedule beforehand, but then you have New Orleans at home. Good place for a new coach to start.
You know, I think it was NFL Network, and maybe Ian Rappaport reported something interesting, and so I want to bring it to the table, which I do believe to be true. The owner, Stephen Ross, is really big on fans coming to their events. In fact, they did so well with Formula One, George. You probably haven't seen this, but at Hard Rock Stadium, the track is still there. They didn't take it down because they don't want to disrupt how many fans and how much money they made off that. That's really what gets him. So my thing is this, George, and here's why I am going to buy this. I think he's going to make it through the year and then he's going to be fired, is because I just think it is rock bottom right now. They're 0-3. So, like, are they going to lose 3 consecutive games again this season? I don't think so. I think they're going to win 6 games or 7 games, which tells me it's win, loss, 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 win, loss, loss, So I just think they make the change at the end of the year. If they're not going to make it now and they're 0-3, the only thing that I would say to caveat would be is if they lose in their next game. If they lose that next game, then 0-4, yes, I think it happens. I don't think they will, though. So I am going to buy this. I think he'll be head coach through the end of the season. All right, this one seems rather easy now that we know some new information. You would start Deebo Samuel over Jamison Williams this week. Buy or sell? We probably could get through this one quick, I think.
What did you say at the opening of this when you wanted to discuss the Baltimore-Detroit game? Start them all. Yeah, start them all. I expect some points to be scored in the Baltimore Ravens-Detroit game. Deebo's had a nice start to the season. He has, but I don't know what he's going to be with Marcus Mariota. All right, you're playing the Raiders here. It's at home. I get all that here. And the Raiders do let up some points to receivers here, and I'm sure they'll be using the running game as well. They're going to use Deebo everywhere, right, to really do anything here. But, no, I'm starting Jay. I don't think it'll be a blowout, mind you, but I would start Jameson Williams over Deebo Samuel this week.
Yeah, I have to say the same. And I think George is right. It's a good start for Deebo. You probably could see him getting more, little shovel passes or plays behind the line of scrimmage, maybe to make it more worth it. But come on, this guy, Mariota, is not Jaden Daniels. I don't see that happening. And the other thing, too, is that you'd be living with regret if you made this move and you started Deebo and you didn't start Williams and you said, wait a second, I knew going in exactly what the scenario was and I didn't even make the right call. So you start Jamison Williams. So I am going to say sell on this and just basically ride with Detroit. As George mentioned, it's a great matchup, I think, for them this week against Baltimore. Should be a fun game. Okay, the Broncos running backs, going into the year, we heard all about this R.J. Harvey, and then Sean Payton was going to be playing him, and he's a 3-down back, etc. And they ended up getting J.K. Dobbins. I mean, Dobbins looks like he's been the better back thus far, unless I'm missing something. Broncos running backs currently are unstartable in fantasy, George. This is a really tough pill to swallow, especially for me. I got Harvey in a league, and I don't know what to do.
I don't have them in any, by the way. I don't have Dobbins or Harvey anywhere. Not because I thought they weren't going to be good. It just didn't work out for me. I actually wanted Harvey, but couldn't quite pull it off here. Are they unstartable? Well, no, of course not. I mean, anybody running back with a pulse has value here, right? So they're not unstartable. I'm probably, if you would have said Harvey's unstartable, I might agree with that. Dobbins has had 14 points each week. 14 fantasy points. He's got a touchdown each week. That's nothing to sneeze at. I'll take that. Like in this game, I'm starting guys like Tony Pollard. He's outpointed him, right? Henderson, he's outpointed him. So, no, I think Dobbins is startable. Harvey is not startable. So it's sort of, somewhere in the middle there. But the question is for both, I'll sell that. I think Dobbins you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go against you, but Dobbins has played very well. This is a sell. I mean, you can absolutely play Dobbins. You just can't play Harvey. And I have a Harvey in a league where it was just very easy for me because I took Aaron Jones and I said, all right, if Harvey doesn't work out, I'll just play him. Can't do that either. Finally, let's get to Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears, who's been very much up and down thus far. Like, it seems like quarter by quarter. It's really weird. Maybe it's just if you could play fantasy football for quarters, you may have better success. Caleb Williams, first overall pick in the draft. He's got Ben Johnson there. Hasn't worked out thus far. Still a long way to go. He's on bust watch, George. Buy or sell?
No, I don't think he's on bust watch. So I'll sell this. I already said it several times. The Bears have no defense. They're going to give up a lot of points. He's going to have to throw the ball, Caleb himself. He should have a good game against the Cowboys, fantasy-wise. I don't know how it's going to be NFL-wise. He may miss some reads, throw some picks here, whatever it might be, but he should put up points. And I think he will run the ball more. I think they're going to have to start incorporating that as well here, especially if their running game is not doing anything. If DeAndre Swift's out, Rashawn Johnson doesn't really play, Manangai, whatever this guy is. So, no, I don't think he's on bust watch, not this week.
I think he is. I mean, look, he's a first pick in the draft. If Bryce Young is on bust watch, this guy's on bust watch too. Just my opinion there. All right, coming back next, we'll dive more into running backs, and then we have the SportsGrid 60. You're watching Fantasy Sports today.
look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Some of the biggest reactions, I don't know if they're overreactions, but reactions have been to Raiders running back Ashton Genty, who was taken in the first round. And George, we just got to call it what it is thus far. He has not looked good at all. Like, at all. Like, he has, I mean, maybe it's the line and maybe there's other factors involved. But, I mean, if you're looking for a 50-yard touchdown, how about like a 5-yard run or a 10-yard run from Ashton Genty? It's been awful. And kind of funny that, you know, Sleeper posted this the other day. Who would you rather have in redraft right now? Ashton Genty, Chuba Hubbard. Man, like, I mean, I watched Genty play a ton in college, and you know, my fears are coming true here a little bit because, George, I think we talked about this in the fantasy draft season, is that I do think eventually he's going to bust one off for 50, but there's just so many of these run into the line and he's down, and he runs into the line and he's down again. So I'm waiting for the bust out here. I am a little concerned, though. I gotta admit, I'm a little worried.
Oh, I think that's fair. I'm also worried that he's not getting the touches. It doesn't make any sense to me. He only had 14 touches last week, 11 runs, three catches. We got to do better than that. You know, they had the ball, first and goal inside the 6, and they didn't give him the ball. I mean, what are we doing? We did hear Pete Carroll come out and say this week, yeah, he knows he needs to get Genty at least 20 touches a game here, which makes a lot of sense to me. But what you said is correct. I mean, the offensive line's not good. You know, so that's a problem here. He is going down easier than we thought here. And teams, I don't think teams respect the passing game, Greg. You know, they're not worried. Bowers is great, but he's a tight end. You know, they're not worried about Myers going over the top here, you know, breaking things off here. They don't have that number one guy. So I think that's also a concern. The answer to Genty or Hubbard? Hubbard's certainly safer. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt he's the safer guy if that's what you want here. Yeah. Genty probably has the higher upside. So what do you want here? You know, I think if I had a good team, I'd probably want the safer pick in Hubbard.
Yeah, and by the way, Hubbard, very underrated. Every year, he's never the top RB1, and he's maybe even a back-end RB2. But once again, the guy always performs and also can catch the ball out of the backfield. Look, I'm rooting for Genty. He was fantastic in college. But if you go back and you watch, he had a lot of runs that went nowhere, and you waited for the big one. We're still waiting for the big one with Ashton Genty. Okay, time for us to now wrap up this edition of Fantasy Sports Today. George and I will wrap it up with some commentary as we close it out. It's called the Sports Grid 60.
All right. Last Monday night, we saw the Monday night doubleheader. We had one game at 7, one game at 10. A lot of people complain about these. They don't like the Monday night doubleheaders. I think they don't like the fact that one game started at 10, which means here on the East Coast, you had to be up to 1 o'clock. I love these. All right. I am very sorry. And we're going to get 3 more of them this year, by the way. Though I think only one of those 3 is going to be 7 and 10 again. The other 2 are, I think, 7-15 and 8-15. I love these, Greg, because, I'd rather have standalone games than, trying to follow 9 games at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. We may love that, but I like the standalone games. They're easier for, look at your fantasy team to obviously follow the game. In-game betting, much easier for a standalone game than to follow 9 at once here. So I will be sorry to see these go away, and they are going away. And the new contract for ESPN, part of that contract is no more doubleheaders on Monday night. Yeah, I guess that once again, that's all about money. They're probably not getting the ratings they wanted for those. But Craig, like I said, I was a fan of them. I like the double. Listen, the more football, the better. I'm that guy who wants a 20-week season. I want to kill as much of February as possible here, because I don't live in beautiful Miami where it's 90 degrees all year long. So I want as much football as possible here. So I'll be sorry to see the Monday night doubleheaders go.
13 weeks in fantasy football is generally the regular season. It's not very often that I have a league where I've started 0-2 like I did this year and lost last week. Joe Burrow got hurt, got my 8 points, and that was it. Where do you feel that you're at if you're 0-2 in fantasy football? Are you in some trouble? Yes. This is not the regular season of the NFL where you have 17 weeks. The only saving grace, I guess, for fantasy football, if you're 0-2, is that most leagues that you're playing in, 5, 6, 7 teams make the playoffs. So, a lot of people ask me this question, am I dead? I'm 0-2. Is it over 0-2? No. But 0-3, yeah, you pretty much are. Now, leagues will get you in for the most amount of points and things like that, and I definitely keep that hope alive. But I gotta say, for those of you who are out there like me, in one of my leagues, not both, one of mine have the most points. The other one, I'm 0-2. I think you got to go all out. It's a must-win for you in Week 3. So don't be afraid to pick up like Seattle's defense against the Saints or something like that. Go out, make the moves you need to win. George, have yourself a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week on FST.
Absolutely. Everybody enjoy. Good luck this weekend.
All right. For George and our producer, Sam, I'm Craig. Have a great weekend, everyone.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
51-0, Donnie.
Yeah.
Those numbers don't lie. Georgia, every time they rush for over 200 yards, that's dating back from 2017 against FCS and FBS opponents. They don't lose. The 2 years that they won back-to-back national championships, Year 1, they rushed for over 208 times. Year 2, when they beat TCU, that year they rushed for over 206 times.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.